Hi, my name is Sarah Morand. My pen name is SG Morand, and I'm a writer and classical literature enthusiast. Today, I'm going to be talking about 1984. I just finished reading this book, and I'm still in shock over it. I went into it thinking that I would get a lot out of it, but not really enjoy reading it. That it would be a very difficult read, and that it'd be very emotionally involved, which it was, but I haven't really had a lot of luck with dystopian books in the past where I've really enjoyed the process of reading them because they tend to be so disturbing. And while 1984 definitely fits disturbing as a description, it was actually, the writing of it made it a very enjoyable read. So I just finished reading it. I sped through it. I could not put it down. I was reading at a crazy pace on this book. And it's about 280 pages. I have the hardcover edition. And 3 parts. I loved it. It was definitely a interesting scenario as far as the plot went. I kind of went into this book not really knowing what to expect. I didn't really know that much about it, which I guess is probably a good way to go into a dystopian novel, not really knowing the plot of it and being able to just be immersed in it without anticipating certain things. I definitely had that experience with 1984. I went into the book knowing I guess about Big Brother. I kind of knew that concept, which is a big concept throughout the book, but that was it. I knew nothing about what was going to happen in this book. I didn't know what to expect, any of it. And so as I was reading it, I was constantly going with the twists and turns and trying to figure out what happened next, which I would definitely recommend if you're going to read a dystopian book. It's an amazing experience to go in completely blind. And it's kind of amazing that I was able to do that since this book has been out since the 1950s. But I was very glad I got the chance to do that because I got a lot out of it and it was a lot of fun. So I wrote down some quotes that really stuck out to me in my commonplace book. So I'm going to read a few of those. The very first sentence in the book really was just very poetic and stuck out immediately and grabs your interest right from the start. The first sentence is, "It was a bright, cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. I think that really encapsulates this dark, kind of brooding atmosphere of 1984, and it sets you into this world where time is really a big theme in this book. History is being altered. The past is being altered. Past, present, and future are in the hands of the powerful. So there's another quote. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, here's the quote. "Who controls the past?" ran the party slogan. "Controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." That is a huge theme that pops up over and over and over again in the book, is that the party, INGSOC, which stands for English Socialism, shortened, the party in 1984, who is this regime in charge of everything and manipulative and controlling and all of that, they are taking the past and they are altering it so that it makes it seem like what they say in the present is actually foreseeing what will happen in the future. So they're altering the past so that if anybody goes back and looks at the past, they can't prove that what Big Brother and INGSOC say is incorrect in any way. And so by controlling the past, they control the future. And the people who hold the power in the present are the ones that are able to alter the past. So time has a big role in 1984. And the main character, Winston, it has a big role in his life. He looks back to his childhood and he can hardly remember things, and his memory is kind of a little warped. He's definitely a bit of an unreliable narrator. You don't know whether or not he's actually believing fact, or if it's memories he's made up, or if it's lies the party has told him. And so that really makes this interesting reading experience where you're like, okay, is what you are saying actually happening, or is it something the party says is happening, or is it something that you imagined happened? And so time plays a huge role in his character development as well, especially as we get to see him progress through the book. We see at the beginning just like this angry man who's just not in agreement with the party, but then you see how his life changes and certain things change, and I won't spoil it, but it's definitely, you can almost feel this clock ticking, tick, 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 as you're going through the book, and time feels short, even though in reality, it's almost the opposite of that, because the party is at war, but the party has always been at war, and the party will always be at war, because this regime that's been established is eternal, and Big Brother is eternal, and nothing will ever change. And so you have this imminent feeling that something bad is going to happen all throughout the book, but then you also have this feeling that nothing is going to ever change. And that's a really interesting dynamic that's going on in 1984. So another big theme in 1984 is the idea of thought, and your personal thoughts being the only thing you control, but sometimes you don't even have control over them. The party even has control over it. And so this idea of your thoughts being like kind of the last bastion of your independence and your privacy, and the party encroaching on that and taking control of that, even so that you don't even have your thoughts aren't even safe from them. That's another big idea that happens in 1984 that is super unsettling and unnerving, and definitely something that just kind of made my skin crawl almost as I was reading it. And so Winston, as he's getting ready to kind of rebel in his own way, starts this journal. And just by the act of writing down his thoughts, he's committing what the party would call thought crime, which is where you think of a crime. You don't even commit it, you just think about it, and thus you are guilty. So one of the quotes I have written down is, "He had committed, would still have committed, even if he had never set pen to paper, the essential crime that contained all others in itself. Thought crime, they called it." So Winston commits this crime, and this is kind of the first stepping stone to his rebellion. He's been having thought crimes before where he's thinking about doing things, but now by actually physically putting pen to paper, he's making it more concrete. He's taking that first step out of line that is really putting his life on the line, and it's his way of fully thrusting himself into this role of like rebel. And when Winston writes in his journal, this is what he's trying to find a reason to write. He's like, who am I even writing to? If this gets discovered, I'll be dead. Any descendants I might have will be sold into the party. The party controls the future, so unless something changes, the words in this journal are meaningless. And the past, you can't write to the past. So Winston finally has this realization of who he's writing to, and he writes that in his journal. "To the future or to the past, to a time when thought is free, when men are different from one another and do not live alone, to a time when truth exists and what is done cannot be undone, from the age of uniformity, from the age of solitude, from the age of Big Brother, from the age of doublethink, greetings. So he writes to the future or the past or wherever it may be, a time when truth exists, when truth is out there and what is done cannot be undone. He's writing to that time from his own time. And so here comes the idea of time again that is very prevalent in 1984. So a few other quotes that I really liked. This one is, the consequences of every act are included in the act itself. So in a way he's saying, by doing the act, you're accepting the consequences and you're acknowledging those consequences, and those consequences exist and there's nothing you can do about it. And so just by committing that act, you are accepting those consequences. Another quote that has to do with the idea of thought crime, which is one of the most deadly crimes you can commit in the party. And the reason why is because it's the one crime that means that the party doesn't have complete control over you. And Winston says, thought crime does not entail death. Thought crime is death. Just by having the thought, it doesn't mean you might die. It's as if you were already dead. And here's another quote that has to do with the party having control of the past that I thought really stuck out to me. If the party could thrust its hand into the past and say of this or that event, it never happened, that surely was more terrifying than mere torture and death. So Winston is in this position within the party where he's kind of a lesser party member. So there's higher party members, lesser party members, and then the proles, forgive my pronunciation on that, which are kind of the common folk and almost like a subculture of indentured servants almost. And they're like uneducated and forced to do the party's bidding, but also in a way they're given more freedom than the party members, who are required to follow all of the rules of the party, and even their thoughts must belong to the party. So Winston, who's one of these kind of middle of the line people, sub-party members, he's in this position where his job is literally to alter the past. He's given this little note with this brief instruction of what he's supposed to do. And what's kind of terrifying about it is they always phrase the instruction as if they're just correcting a misprint or a misspelled word or something in the last edition of the news or whatever he's altering. And in reality, they're changing incredibly important information that's involved in that. So like one instance that really unsettles him and sticks with him is these 3 party members who were convicted of like treason. And he is in charge of making it seem like they actually committed the crimes they committed, when in reality, he saw proof that they were innocent in the past documentation of the event, and that they were revealed among the party at one point, and he's tasked with altering that. And that really sticks with him, the fact that he's seen truth and he knows it's out there, but it's being destroyed, and he has a bit of a role in doing that. And so he finds that more terrifying than mere torture or death, the fact that the party has that kind of control. Winston goes on to write, in fact, there will be no thought as we understand it now. Orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. So Winston understands this idea that as the party requires you to just accept whatever they say, you are literally losing the ability to think. And this idea of doublethink that was mentioned in one of the earlier quotes is literally the action of hearing information and processing what you heard and knowing that it's false, but telling yourself that it's true. So at the same time, you're being like, yes, this information is false, but I'm going to hear it as truth. And then you're erasing that thought process in your mind so that you're just hearing the information and you're saying, yes, this is truth right away. And something that they keep bringing up, that is kind of the illustration of this idea, is 2 + 2 = 5. And if the party tells you 2 + 2 = 5, then 2 + 2 = 5. Even if you know that 2 + 2 = 4. Something that I just wrote down as a quote because I thought it was kind of funny and how relatable it was and sad at the same time is this one. About a quarter of one's salary had to be earmarked for voluntary subscriptions, which were so numerous that it was difficult to keep track of them. I don't know about anybody else, but I have beef with subscription services. It annoys me to no end, especially when a lot of these things, even I remember a time when a lot of these things were free and suddenly they cost a monthly fee to have them. And some of them you're kind of required to pay in a way. You know, there's ways you can get around it sometimes, certain things, but other things, especially as someone in a kind of a creative situation as an author, there are certain things that I feel like I kind of have to pay for as a subscription, unfortunately, in order to get my books from idea to execution, especially in the end production of like making book covers and editing books and stuff like that. And so this idea of paying for subscriptions is very frustrating to me, and something that stuck out in the book to me is the fact that George Orwell was able to foresee that, I guess, happening. Like, I imagine in the 50s and stuff, you had some subscriptions, like newspapers and things like that, but I can't imagine that most people from that time period would ever foresee how out of hand it has gotten nowadays. So, this idea of thought being the emphasis, the foundation in order to rebel, is a big theme. And as Winston is looking at newer generations, as the party has existed for longer and longer periods of time, he's seeing this trend where the younger people are no longer thinking for themselves, and they never really acquire the ability to think for themselves. And Winston was born at a time before the party existed. And so while most of his life he's been in the party's grasp, he also vaguely remembers a time before it existed. And because he's kind of on this threshold between the two times, he can see that the process of thinking is kind of dissolving as time progresses. And Winston notes, I believe it was Winston, it may have been someone else in the book, but I think it was Winston, notes, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. So the party has kind of trapped its members into this situation where they don't know to think that they want anything other than what the party is offering. And if they only rebelled, they would see that the party is lying to them. But they won't rebel because they're not being conscious of anything being wrong. Winston also says, the heresy of heresies was common sense, which is this big idea again that people aren't using logic. They're just accepting what the party tells them. And if they use common sense, that would be deemed heresy. Winston just holds on to this idea throughout the story that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows. Real freedom is being able to accept truth and logic and to understand that they're all absolutes. They're all things that cannot be altered, that are true no matter what other people think. And real freedom is the freedom to accept that and to acknowledge that. One of the main things that happens in 1984 is that Winston ends up having this relationship with this woman who he starts out hating, and then he learns that she actually is kind of in her own sort of rebellion against the party. And so he ends up having this relationship with her. And he realizes as he's having this relationship that there's nothing pure really about it. Winston is married, although him and his wife don't live together anymore. They don't see each other. They can't stand each other. And this woman is someone that I feel like he kind of starts out, he doesn't really love her. He just is wanting to have that relationship with someone, and it just happens to be that she's there and she's willing, and so that kind of is how they stumble into this relationship to begin with, I think. And anyway, he acknowledges this and he says, "No emotion was pure because everything was mixed up with fear and hatred. Their embrace had been a battle, the climax of victory. It was a blow struck against the party. It was a political act." And so he says they're not free to pursue anything anymore. And so every freedom that they take for themselves is in fact a political act and a strike against the party. And in some way that taints certain things. And so anytime they're, making a decision for themselves, really, they are in a way rebelling, and it makes the thing not really a freedom necessarily, but a rebellion. And Winston also says, if you can feel that staying human is worthwhile, even when it can't have any result whatever, you've beaten them. He realizes that one of the things that separates him from the party is a sense of humanity and a sense of wanting to believe what is logical and right and true, and not just succumbing to whatever they teach him. And so, in a way, just by having that pursuit of truth, you have already beaten the party. He goes on to say, they could lay bare in the utmost detail everything that you had done or said or thought, but the inner heart, whose workings were mysterious even to yourself, remained impregnable. Throughout 1984, there's this idea that you can lose everything to the party, but as long as you stay pure inside in your heart, in a way you've still won. As long as your thoughts are still your own and your heart is still your own, you've won against the party. And unfortunately, in the end, the party is able to take even that from Winston. And that's kind of the final blow that breaks him as a character, is the fact that he goes through so much and he gets so much taken from him, but he still has his heart. He still has who he is really inside. And at the very end, the party is even able to take that from him. One quote that was one of my personal favorites from the story is, being in a minority, even a minority of one, did not make you mad. There was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. And I think that is probably the quote that resonates the most from 1984, is the fact that truth is truth, untruth is untruth. There is no way that those two things can be the same. And even if everybody tells you that the truth is a lie and that it's not an absolute, if you still believe that, you're not insane. Even if everybody else believes it and you think, I've lost it. I'm the only one who believes in truth anymore. And I'm all alone. Even if you think that you have gone absolutely crazy because you're the only one, that's not true. So 1984, I gave it 5 stars. It's an amazing read. I would recommend everybody to read it at some point in their lives. It's definitely a heavy read, and it deals with themes of like sex and lying, and there's a torture scene in the book that's a little graphic. It doesn't, yeah, it's a little graphic, the torture scene, and it's just it's disturbing in many ways. But I think it speaks volumes about what happens when power is corrupted and the hopelessness of that type of situation, and how we need to not buy into the fact that there are no absolutes and how dangerous that ideology can be. And I think 1984 is really a great book that delves into that issue, and for this day and age, I think it's a powerful read and one that people should not overlook. That being said, I would not recommend it for anyone that's like teenagers or younger, because it is a very disturbing at times book, and it does deal with the issue of sex a lot. And so really it dives into the issue of like what happens when the family dynamic is deconstructed, and how certain impulses can be exploited and things like that. In that way, it dives into the issue of sex. And so it does, you know, be aware of that if you're going to read it. I enjoyed it because the writing style is fantastic. George Orwell is a great writer. And I thought that it spoke to me in a way where it encouraged me to believe in the truth, but also to be wary of what other people are trying to sell you, if you know what I mean. So, great read. One of my favorite books I've read in 2025 so far. Definitely recommend it. If you've read 1984, put in the comments what you thought of it, whether you enjoyed it, whether you were terrified of it as you were reading it. I was at certain times. And other dystopian books you would recommend, because I'm looking for more recommendations. I think I might read Fahrenheit 451 next. We'll see. And make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next one. Thank you.